Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Also, if it is morning or evening where you are, good morning and good evening. Welcome to our feature presentation today with DockYard, software developers learning on the job. Our guest speakers today is Doug Yoon and also Benjamin Rosas. My name is Jennifer Ponder. I am located in Atlanta, Georgia. I am the Senior Front-End Track Leadership Fellow. Our guest speakers today, Doug Yoon is the engineering manager at DockYard with experience in full stack technologies. He enjoys playing music, hanging outdoors, and volunteering within the community. He currently resides in sunny Seattle. And also, Benjamin Rosas is a chief turned scientist turned programmer. He writes Ruby and JavaScript. At DockYard, he enjoys learning, teaching, and experiencing new things, and he lives in Minneapolis. Now we're going to move into our Women Who Code mission, which speaks to inspiring women to excel in technology careers. Our mission speaks to a world where women are representative as technical executives, founders, VCs, board members, and software engineers. Also, please take a look at our code of conduct. We definitely want this to be an inclusive environment. If there is something that you are not seeing or something that you are seeing that may be a violation to our code of conduct, please definitely report it to us. You can always email us frontend@womenwhocode, but we definitely want this to be an environment and a community where everyone feels welcome. Now, some information about Women Who Code Front End. So if you are a member, thank you so much for being a member and coming back. If you're new to our track events, definitely you can become a member by going on to womenwhocode.com/frontend. Also, email us again, frontend@womenwhocode.com. If there's something that you'd like to see coming to the track or you'd like to express interest in being a speaker, we're definitely always glad to have speakers, and we love to have people from our community in tech to express any talks that they have with us. Also, you can find us online on social media. Women Who Code, so WWCode Front End, that's how you find us on Twitter, and we're also on Instagram at WWCode Front End 1. Also, we have Slack available, so definitely if you are not in our Slack already, you can definitely send an email to frontend@womenwhocode.com and we will get a Slack invitation out to you. And without now further ado, Doug Yoon and Benjamin Rosas, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction.
And thanks for the opportunity to speak and to give this presentation here. So we're going to be talking about learning on the job, and we can just briefly go over what our goals are, what this is all about. You heard a little bit about who we are. So what is this about? There's a long-standing cultural paradigm in tech that in order to level up and advance your career, you need to do a ton of extracurricular, unpaid work and self-education off the clock in your own time. And the socioeconomic implications of that paradigm tend to favor a certain privileged class who have a lot of free time and resources on their hands to do things outside of work. So we're trying to challenge that paradigm and say that you don't need a bunch of free time and resources outside of work in order to level up. In fact, there are some techniques and some pro tips and some strategies that you can implement to better learn on the job and create a generative culture that's conducive for other people to learn on the job as well. So we talk about generative culture. It's a bit of a paradigm shift from what a lot of work cultures might be like. So we're trying to move things towards the right on this chart. This is a table that was taken from a changelog blog. It was written by David Kaplan. You can check it out at changelog.com. There's some really good resources about what it means to create a generative culture. We're not going to go through all of that, but if you sort of scan, you can see how things move from left to right on here. What we're trying to do is move things right. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and it's more about having a goal in mind. Probably at DockYard, we'd say we're somewhere between bureaucratic and generative and always trying to shift things to the right.
All right. So who we are. DockYard is a digital product consultancy. We partner with user-centered organizations to accelerate digital product innovation. We're a collaborative team of experienced product strategists, designers, engineers, and we use future-forward technology to help clients craft impactful experiences. The too long didn't read is we are web consultants. So Benjamin was talking or speaking to what we're talking about today. I'll briefly go over what we will not be covering this afternoon. So with the paradigm for growth, we want to make sure that there are a lot of activities that are useful, or we want to highlight that there are a lot of activities that are useful, but they certainly fall outside of the scope of our presentation because they require resources that are not typically provided on the job. Some of these include attending meetups outside of work, working on open source projects, hobbies, side hustles, enrollments in schools, including online school, and committing to unpaid labor or internships. There are 3 levels of learning that we would like to cover today. These activities that we will talk about cover successful outcomes of a generative culture. And we hope that it helps you, your team, and your organization push towards positive growth.
All right, thank you, Doug. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about individual level learning. So one of the things to say here is it's not individual as in completely in isolation. Some of these things require some team buy-in, but they're things that can be spearheaded on an individual level without necessarily having a shift in management culture or a shift in overall team culture. So the easiest one is, of course, reading, something we all probably do. But there's some ways to integrate more reading in the workplace. One thing is to cultivate reading lists that you share with your peers, and that can be books, or it can be blogs, it can be even social media reading threads, as well as physical books, which are still awesome, I think. And if you work in a physical workplace, it's nice when you have kind of a shared library of books that people can bring in. Sometimes tech books are really expensive. Sometimes they're hard to get. So being able to share and have a place to share physical books with each other can be really helpful for people. And be social while reading. Share what you're reading online and offline with each other. The next step in reading is reading code, right? And reading other people's code is a great way to learn. Probably all had some experience with this. You know, there's code that you have to read as a matter of course of doing reviews and pull requests and things like that. But you might find opportunities to read code outside of the project you're working on. For example, if you're working in a larger company, there might be a lot of source code that's available from other projects and other teams that's actually visible for you to go and sort of peruse through and get a taste for what kind of patterns and libraries and things are being implemented by other teams. It might give you some opportunity to even ask questions of those teams as to why they might be using a given pattern or how they solved a certain problem they might have. Another opportunity is to look at the libraries that you use, and though they may be well documented, sometimes the source code itself is a better documentation, or at least a parallel from the public documentation. And I learn a lot just by reading through the source code of libraries that I'm using, trying to figure out what a certain function might do or how to overcome a certain error, and just walking through the source code. Hopefully it's well commented. Then the kind of pay it forward aspect of this is to make your code as readable as possible with comments and using nice styling conventions so that other people can learn and read from your code as well. Online learning, we talked about, we're not going to get into enrolling in an online university or anything that's like a big commitment that would be unlikely to happen in the workplace. But there's a lot of course, really good documentation. My favorite is, for web stuff at least, is MDN, which is maintained by Mozilla. I have a lot of workplaces provide subscriptions to online learning tools, such as O'Reilly Learning. And there's some other good free or freemium level learning platforms like glitch.com and codesandbox.io. So all these can be incorporated in little bite-sized amounts during the course of your daily work, and sometimes can be done in tandem with your coworkers if there's room for that in your project schedule. So kind of a pro tip about doing online learning at work is that teaching and learning are really interwoven. And so sometimes management or just the team velocity might be a little bit reluctant to bookend some time for you to do learning activities. They might be more willing, and it might sell better to repackage those learning activities as also opportunities to teach. So the deliverable for a learning activity might be that you come back and share what you've learned with the team, or you might be in a form of a presentation or a proof of concept. There might also be a specific problem that you're trying to solve, and in order to solve it, you need to do some learning. And so a deliverable for that might be solving the problem and then sharing with the team what you learned, what your resources you have discovered along the way, and then how you use those resources to solve the problem. So although it might be a little bit tricky in this high velocity, highly productive environment where we're trying to, move tickets and push product out to customers as fast as we can, to take time to do individual learning. But when that learning is seen as an opportunity to teach the rest of the team and to level up your other team members, it can often be packaged as a really effective use of time, and something that management might really actually enjoy seeing, especially if you're able to bring that learning back to the table and share it with everyone else. Also, just speaking up and asking questions is super helpful. It's sometimes, we all suffer from some degree of imposter syndrome, and it's so beneficial if you can foster a culture where it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not know things. It's okay to be confused or to share what your limitations of your experience might be. So another way to foster this culture is when you have questions answered to share back with like a "Today I learned" or TIL thread in your chat or in your email threads. Ask people who are the project experts to explain why it is they made the choices that they made, or to talk you through the history of a project or the history of some of the choices made. It can be really revealing. Sometimes not everything is done with pure hindsight being 20/20. A lot of times when you learn the history and learn the choices that were made in the past, you realize that there's a lot of room for improvement, and something that might have seemed daunting to you could actually be quite approachable and something you can improve on yourself. And then the pay it forward side of this is, of course, to be open to having people ask questions of you. And again, to just foster that environment where it's safe to ask questions, it's safe to not know things, it's safe to share that, "Oh, I never knew this before and I just learned it right now." That can all be really good for the team. So this is my favorite, be a detective. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of code archaeology, whether that's get history or get blame, collecting the facts, challenging your assumptions, and going in deep. Every now and then, a big, juicy problem might present itself to you. And maybe it's scary at first, but sometimes a big problem that seems a little bit out of scope from your previous experience is a really good excuse to dig in deeper and learn something that you didn't know already. You can go to the next slide. So the pro tip side of this is use a hard to solve problem as an excuse to learn, but don't go it alone. Getting team buy-in to take on a problem that's difficult or new can be a good excuse to learn new skills on the job, but you should ask for help and ask often. Be open about your progress and learnings as you go. Even if a more experienced person might be able to solve that problem faster than you, they should appreciate your willingness to step in and learn and become the champion of that problem, even if they help you along the way. Letting you have the opportunity to own that problem, even if you have to ask for help a lot of times or learn from other people that are more experienced, it's a really, it gives you the chance to level up and be the champion of that. And then next time a similar problem like that comes up, you might find that you're now the senior subject level expert and that you have the opportunity to coach someone else who's new. So you get an opportunity with this sort of process to have like a miniature mentor-mentee relationship during the course of solving that problem. And it's tempting to just give the hard problems to the senior level people, and let them solve them. But giving some of those problems to junior level people or people that just aren't experienced in that particular subject is just such a great way to foster growth and foster shared learning on a team. And last, this is just sort of a fun one you can do in little bite-sized moments here and there, maybe while the coffee is heating up or the tea or whatever your preferred beverage is, to take 10 or 15 minutes to revisit your development environment, learn some new keyboard shortcuts, see how other people are working, and try a new plugin and clean up, little tips and tricks to revisit your environment for productivity. And then when you share those with other people, it can be really helpful just to move forward and just learn about some of the tools that you're relying on.
Great. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Next, we'll be covering some of these activities based upon the team level. A lot of this will be focused on some basis of the individual learning, but we'll encompass with our colleagues and our teammates. So one of the common activities that we really enjoy are code reviews. They're a really great way to teach and share knowledge amongst team members. I'm sure that a lot of us do it today. And it's a really great opportunity to expose ourselves to lots of new code. We get to discover new ideas and even learn new techniques. In addition, we get to learn new technical details about an application. I mean, I know that for me personally, I've been on projects where there have been dragons in the darkness or dragons in the caves. And it's a really great opportunity for us to review code that our colleagues are doing so that we can get a better understanding of what's going on. And in addition to that, we get the opportunity to practice communicating constructively. These open discussions, if done right, improve team communications and also helps fundamentally build that company culture. And lastly, yes, of course, we can always review our own code before submitting a pull request, and that focuses back to that individual learning. Pair programming is another great activity that we like to practice. There's the dynamic of driver and navigator. The driver is typically the person actively writing the code, and the navigator is the person observing or guiding the driver to the overall direction of the implementation. There's a really great opportunity here to effectively work with new and different colleagues. Some of the typical pairings we will see is novice and novice, maybe novice in subject matter or new to the industry. Likewise, we can do an expert plus expert pairing where both folks are maybe senior level, but want to really just dig into that large refactor looming in the future. And next is the expert and novice, and with this comes a lot of practice of verbal communication and active listening in both of these roles. The next activity that is really great, and I highly recommend folks try this, is mob programming. Team members work together on a planned amount of work. With those roles previously with driver and navigator, we add passengers, and with the inclusion of passengers, we get a new dynamic of observation, or what we also can consider constructive backseat driving. Some great scenarios for mob programming would be common knowledge sharing for applications. Maybe you are starting a greenfield product and you want to lay down a foundational layer. This is a really great opportunity to get the team involved in unison. Or maybe you do have to tackle on a large amount of technical debt or migration of code. It's really great to just get everyone into the same room or online resource and just work through that issue. One pro tip with the code reviews, pair programming, mob programming, is we want to make sure that our egos are left at the door. We want to emphasize that the person we're working with, and certainly yourself, you are not your code. We're not assuming that everything you write down is you personally. So we want to make sure that the entire point of the review is to find problems And please emphasize that you don't want to take it personally when a problem or an issue is uncovered. Understand and accept that everyone will make mistakes. It's one of the reasons why there are erasers on pencils. The point of the code review is to find these issues early before it makes it out to production. And certainly with code reviews, text-based communication can always be misconstrued or misinterpreted. Think of how many times we've quickly dashed off a text message or an email without the without the intention of insulting someone or hurting someone's feelings. It's one of the reasons why emojis exist. And then we also want to emphasize empathy. There are many different types of learning styles. Some people are visual learners, other people are auditory learners, and other people have a focus on interpersonal or interpersonal dynamics. So with all of these team level activities, we want to focus on psychological safety, where the definition of psychological safety is when we show or employ oneself without the fear of negative consequences of self-image, status, or career positioning. Psychological safety is a great thing to practice. It is different than trust. I do want to highlight that psychological safety is defined by how colleagues or group members think they are viewed by others in the group, whereas trust is defined more of how one views oneself with another. Another great activity with team learning are open demos within the department. This is really great for cross-pollination amongst two teams or multiple teams. We have the opportunity to see, hear, and understand what other departments are working on. With that, we get exposure to new technologies, processes, strategies. And one of the important things about this is that we also know who knows what within the department. You know, Benjamin and I, we have different skill levels in different subjects. I don't know React, and it's really great that, you know, I know that Benjamin knows React. So if I ever want to pick up that technology, I know who to talk to. And with that, it's also a really great opportunity to network internally. You know, we get to find potential mentors or potential sponsors, or maybe we get to find potential people that we want to mentor. It's overall a really great activity. Internal presentations. You know, just like open demos within the department, internal presentations are a really great way to put yourself out there, learn about a new subject, and also network internally. Certainly these topics or presentations can range from informal to formal. Maybe you have a new technology that you're really excited about, feel free to speak about that. Topics can range from technological or soft skills, and by soft skills, you know, communication, or maybe about topics such as communication or about processes are really great subjects. And we definitely understand that creating presentations or talks can be draining. So by keeping a reasonable time limit, it really helps prevent the overload of work and or effort. And both with those open demos and informal presentations or internal presentations, excuse me, we want to make sure that we volunteer ourselves for some of these opportunities. You know, if we uncover something from our individual reading, you know, that might be a really great opportunity to share that knowledge with team members. And with that, you know, obviously sharing is caring. The great thing is it can be done in any medium. You can do this over email, over Slack, text-based communication, or maybe you just walk over to the next room and chat with your colleague. This is an activity that I really enjoy. It's book club. It's similar to reading alone, but now you have friends and colleagues. It's a really great opportunity to get to know one another, you know, especially if you read a book about or a resource that you both really enjoy or are interested in. And we also open up the avenue of understanding different perspectives and thoughts. We get to share common knowledge and build upon that context in the future. One of the great things is, books can be long, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a book. You can choose a blog post or any other learning recommendations that your colleagues may have. A pro tip here with book club is you want to make sure that you follow it up with reading discussions. Smaller groups we found helps encourage active contributions. And you can certainly keep the number from anywhere from 4 to 6, and that way anyone who feels like they want to contribute to the conversation won't feel over dominated by another speaker. And open up those reading discussions to non-engineers as well. It's awesome to see and hear different perspectives. Say maybe you want to read a book about agile processes, involve designers, project managers, whoever. One thing that I do want to highlight though is also keeping strong opinions weekly held. One of these things is whenever I go into a reading material, I already have assumptions about the topic, and we've certainly seen a lot of these in the past. So, for example, someone's bashing about a technology online, that's a strong opinion, but, it's always smart and great to hear other perspectives. And then with that, you are leveraging your team's collective wisdom, you're overcoming your own biases, and it rolls back to psychological safety as well. Maybe someone is interested about a topic. I'm going to go into a book club or a reading discussion with my presumptions, but I want to make sure that I hear all perspectives before I leave that meeting. And get mentored and sponsored. The two differences here with mentorship is, or the two differences between mentorship and sponsorship, we find that is mentorship is around guidance, specifically how we handle certain scenarios, but we also want to make sure that we receive sponsorship. So recognition from our colleagues, our team, our department, our company as well. It's a really great opportunity to reach out and upskill in your desired skill set. And don't just ask for management, but also ask for sponsorship. Definitely want to highlight that. Our managers are there to help us with career guidance, but we should also ask for new opportunities when those arise. And with those internal demos within our team, or with those internal networking opportunities, if you see a team member that has a skill that you would like to gain, just ask for that opportunity to either work with them, take a conversation with them, or shadow them. So external workshops. A lot of times teams or departments aren't necessarily equipped to independently mentor us. This is a great opportunity to ask if we can attend external workshops. It's great for professional development, and there's tons of workshops that cover technical skills or soft skills. And oftentimes, a lot of these workshops will occur locally and during traditional work hours. If you can find something like that, it's great. It's a really, really easy way to learn on the job. So how do we get buy-in? Benjamin covered this earlier, and a lot of these things, when we talk about bringing in the team, we'll need to talk with perhaps maybe management or leadership. So how do we get those folks or those stakeholders to buy into our activities? So one of the things that we can do is identify a problem area or an opportunity that we would like to correct or fix. We can do the research, collecting metrics or collecting surveys or feedback from our colleagues are all really great ways to do the research. Understanding the stakeholder. This one's important because depending on who you need to talk to, they will have preferences about the bottom line or the positive consequences. So understanding the stakeholder is very important to this process. And plan the pitch. How will you speak to the stakeholder? What are some of the metrics that you will share? How will you phrase this to help the organization or help your team? And next would be gathering feedback. Collect the feedback from your colleagues or those folks that are interested in helping out with this cause. A lot of times we have these blind spots going into a project or initiative, and it's really important to collect that peer feedback. And lastly, the importance of timing the pitch is huge. You know, do you want to talk to this stakeholder and at the end of the day, or do you want to find them, you know, early on in a quarter, just depending on how the organization is flowing through. So timing the pitch is incredibly important when you speak to the stakeholder involved.
All right, thanks, Doug, for the recap of team level stuff. I'm going to zoom out one more click and talk about some things that can be enacted on an entire company level. I'm just going to say a few things before we move into the next slide here. One thing that Doug and I both kind of have non-traditional backgrounds, like not going through traditional computer science curriculum in order to get into programming. And a lot of people ask me, you know, how I was self-taught, or I've made the mistake of even using the term self-taught, which isn't really true. I'm not self-taught. I learned on the job. I mean, I learned enough to get hired as a very, very junior paid intern in my first opportunity. And after that, most of what I've learned has really just been from working with other people. And I think it's the best way to learn is in an environment where you're actively engaged with challenges and a timeline and opportunities and resources and you know, being paid so that you have the time and the resources to go through those processes instead of this kind of, I think we sort of embrace this myth of like a self-taught programmer who does, you know, stays up all night or burns the midnight oil on the weekend to engage in self-education. And there's really so much of what's going on is learning on the job. And in order to create that, it's fostering it at a company level is really important. So if some of you are involved in management or other upper level responsibilities in a company, small or large, or if you in the future might have the opportunity to influence some of those choices that can happen on company-wide direction. We talk a lot about hiring experts versus growing experts. And of course, it's really expensive and challenging to always chase around expert hires in order to get something done in your company. You know, if the only way you're going to ever get there is by hiring top level experts in that field, you better have a really big budget and also be ready for those experts to potentially leave and chase the next company that wants to pay them. The alternative to that, of course, is to growing a team and having room in your company for junior level, for paid interns, and for people of different experiences, maybe not necessarily junior, but coming from a different background. One example of this is I worked at a shop that was transitioning from Angular to React, right? So, you know, option A is we fire all the Angular developers and then go out and hire a bunch of React experts. But that would be a poor choice because the value that a team member brings to a company isn't just their technical knowledge. The value that a team member brings, as we know, has a lot to do with how they work as a team, how they communicate, how they troubleshoot, and how they learn and teach in that team. So instead of firing all the React engineers and firing the Angular engineers and hiring React engineers, we just built in a process for retraining and learning from Angular to React as we went. And it took a little bit of time, but I think it was a really good investment on a company level to do that. All right, so that said, I'll move into the slides. One thing I've liked to do is lunch and learns. So it's kind of similar to an in-department demo, except a lunch and learn can be more company-wide or I like to have an open invitation. You might be surprised that someone in marketing or someone in business analysis or someone in a different department altogether is actually interested in web development or interested in some of the problems that you're solving and has something to contribute, come to your lunch and learn. Even to sit as a fly on a wall at a table when other people are doing a show and tell can just be really informative for someone who's curious and wants to get their foot in the door. So It's the opportunity for internal presentations. It can be also external presentations. Sometimes a lunch and learn, we might just watch a presentation or a speaker deck from a conference, maybe that somebody attended, or maybe that somebody wished they could have attended, and all the videos are on YouTube. So we might sit down and watch them together, discuss some covered topics. And I've done a lunch and learn informally that was just front end topics. So every week we picked a different front end topic and somebody would just talk about it. It didn't have to be very formal. It was more of a conversational setting. And that's sort of there's an intrinsic informality to a lunch and learn. You're usually sitting down, you're probably eating lunch, and you get a chance to just kind of chat and ask questions. So that can really help with the barrier of engagement too, where people don't feel so intimidated. A friend of mine that I worked with was really, really into functional programming, and he wanted to share functional programming with everybody. So what he did was every week he had a lunchtime where he made a slot on the calendar and said, if anybody wants to talk about functional programming, I'm going to be in this room having lunch and talking about functional programming, and anyone is welcome to come and join me. And we did, and it was a great way to just let him share some of his learnings with us. Okay. So again, I'll stress the aspect of open invitation. You might be surprised people that are in other departments that are interested in what you're doing, or that you have thought a lot that you can learn from people in other departments. So if you have that chance, depending on the size of your company, to make these invitations open to everybody, you might want to consider that. Great. And then cross-functional demos are another way to you have cross-pollination between departments on a team. So, you know, at a small company I was in, we would do once a month on Fridays demos where everybody was invited, and you could see what the marketing team was doing, what the design team was doing, what the business intelligence team was doing, what the engineers were doing, and even what the salespeople were doing. And it's just really cool to get an opportunity to ask questions and learn from other departments, and also get a bigger picture on what your company is working on. And, you know, you might see someone who has a problem, and maybe they're not an engineer, and maybe you have a piece of software that could really help them with their little marketing issue or sales or business intelligence issue. Maybe you know some Python, and that would be really helpful for what they're doing in Tableau. And you link up after the cross-functional demo and have an opportunity to share those skills with each other. And you provides the context of what, not just how, but what we're doing. Okay. Similar to that is a company demo, which can be a little bit more formal because you might have external stakeholders or upper level management or executives present. But a company demo can really strengthen your knowledge of the organization and the product. There's also something really humbling and really eye-opening when you get to see outsiders using your product. That could be stakeholders, it could be board members, or it could be members of the public that interact with and use your product. So being able to get those outside perspectives and hear some of the concerns of other stakeholders that aren't necessarily in your particular bubble, whether that's design or engineering or business intelligence, hearing perspectives that board members or members of the public might have, it's just very insightful. Blogging, we at DockYard love this. It's another example of learning by teaching. If you can improve your communication skills, you can build on your knowledge and gain exposure. Again, trying to get a little bit of buy-in for this. When a company allows a little bit of time per month, for example, for employees to write blog posts, then it's, it helps with recruiting, it helps with marketing. It kind of gives you a bit of a social presence as a company and as an individual. So these opportunities that grow your social footprint as an individual can also be really good for the company. And if your company currently doesn't have a blog, or maybe they do, but it's been a little bit neglected, which is often the case, see if you can get buy-in to add a little bit of time, maybe every month or maybe even every other month, and have a rotating schedule or an opt-in for people to write blog posts and have those reviewed internally before you publish them. And on the next slide, we talk about that. The marketing department can be really crucial in this step. They probably have a better understanding of how you want to present your language and your overall identity and brand outwardly to the public. So having the marketing people involved with the blog review and even some of the design contributions to the blog can be great. I'm going to give a shameless plug for DockYard.com/blog if you want an example of how one company has approached this. If you don't have a marketing department, then reach out to someone on your team and see if you can start just bridging that gap between sharing learnings internally and sharing learnings externally with the world. And finally, another kind of talk we call hallway talk. There was a time at DockYard where there was only kind of a physical, literal hallway that ended up being the best place to do internal presentations. But a hallway talk is by design informal. Sometimes you can prepare for them, but sometimes a hallway talk can be more like a lightning talk where somebody just stands up and shows a problem they've been working on or a new tool they discovered or a cool trick that they learned. They can also be slightly more pre-planned with slides. It's sort of similar to a water cooler, and it doesn't have to be physical. If you're not aware, DockYard is an entirely distributed team right now where we all work remotely. And in this current time, I'm sure a lot of you are working remotely right now, either temporarily or permanently. So hallway is just the proverbial hallway. It can be a placeholder in time, maybe once a month or every other month where people can sign up or volunteer and give 5 or 10 minute talks or chats, informal discussions about something you learned, a new tool or trick, a library that you've checked out, or even something that you want to learn and you're looking at it together as a team. Great. So that is the conclusion of the 3 branches that we wanted to address: the individual, the team, and the company level learning. I'm just going to zoom back out a little bit and revisit some of what we discussed about creating a generative culture. So if you look at this table, you might be able to find some examples of these that resonate with where you might be at in your company. And this could be fluid, and different people in your team might have different perspective. But try to think of some opportunities that you have to move something on here from the left to the right. And think about ways that if you're just an individual contributor, that you can get buy-in from management to do that. And if you're a member of management or leadership, think about ways that you can foster and encourage those tips and tricks for building a generative culture in your teams. And in conclusion, I'm just going to say this about our paradigm for growth. Many of us have joined the software industry because we're constant learners. Since many of us cannot dedicate time outside of work to personally and professionally improve, we must ingrain a generative routine into our workday. We have to start and keep this new paradigm for growth. At that, we're going to finish our slides and open up for questions. Thanks so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation, Doug and Benjamin. I'm going to go ahead and look at some questions that we have coming in from the audience right now. We have one from an anonymous attendee here. I tried all of these techniques, but somehow found myself struggling to learn alone during my previous job. What would you say are some of the unique ones that you found extremely helpful and not knew before?
Yeah, I would love to understand what that person found were the struggles or the obstacles learning alone. Based upon that, with the generative culture, was there, like, for example, not enough time to learn alone? Were the colleagues not very helpful on that individual path of learning? And then also just understanding how we all learn. I am awful, for example, with auditory learning. I can't listen to podcasts and do something else. I'm a big reader. I need textbooks or things on my Kindle, and then I can actually go ahead and type and move into more of a kinesthetic learning process. So understanding what type of learner you are, and also setting yourself up for success within that sort of environment, or that road to progress helps out a lot.
And then let's see. Okay, so it looks like we have a follow-up here.
Mhm.
How to test our skills and feel I'm ready to actually do the job. So I'm thinking this is going to be the same person. This is their follow-up. I struggle with that, with feeling confident enough to actually do the job I have learned alone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that in terms of feeling ready, it's really subjective. In a way, you almost never really feel ready. And I think in my experience, if you have the opportunity to work with other people that are a little bit further along on that path, having some guardrails in place where it's not just you doing everything alone, but that, you know, you have the opportunity to say, I think I'm ready, and have a little bit of supervision or a little bit of mentorship in the people that you're able to work with, that can assess where you're at and give you incrementally more challenging tasks. But that's not always an opportunity. Sometimes you have to dive in and just take it on. And I'm not sure exactly what the best advice for that scenario would be, except that especially in this industry with the level of imposter syndrome, and there's just such a whirlwind of new things all the time, and it's kind of impossible for anyone to keep up with all of it, that you might never feel ready. And just being honest about where you're at and being willing to take on a challenge. And when you hit a wall, to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm having a little bit of a challenge here. I think I need to tap some additional resources. Hopefully you are in an environment where it's okay to do that.
Mm-hmm. And just to piggyback on Benjamin's comment, the highlight there is that imposter syndrome, you know, certainly affects our industry and other industries as well. So if this person asking the question, you know, is trying to get into the industry, you know, that's perfectly fine and normal to run into imposter syndrome. You know, Benjamin mentioned that we both did not come from traditional computer science backgrounds, you know, and the first time I tried learning a programming language or a web framework, I actually was learning Rails. And I remember opening up the Rails tutorial, I believe by Michael Hartle. And, you know, with that, you had to learn Ruby, you had to learn Rails, you had to choose a web or a code editor. And, you know, there was just a whole smorgasbord of things to learn. So it's typically fine to feel that you're never adequate or confident to actually tackle on that job if you've been learning independently. So one of those things is to overcome that by just stepping out and reaching out to maybe some of those local meetups or networking opportunities, just to see what other people are doing in terms of the day-to-day, and reaching out for those opportunities with mentorship possibilities, I think is tremendous.
Right, and our next question comes in from Mary Butner. I am currently a teacher trying to break into web development, learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Would love to cross education in web development. Any advice? Thanks.
Yeah, that's exciting. Way to go. And it sounds like maybe you're not trying to switch careers right now, but just to bolster some of the work you're already doing with web development. So your barrier of entry isn't as high as someone who's trying to get hired full time. And I think that I'm going to go back to the Mozilla documentation. There's so many websites and docs online. And when I need kind of a canonical source of truth for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, my personal favorite is what they call MDN, or the Mozilla Developer Network. And you can just Google MDN and find those docs. And there's a lot of introductory and how-to material there as well. The second thing I would say is that if you're not already building a website, even one that's private, maybe just on your computer, or something that's a small project where you don't feel that it has to be perfect, and you have the opportunity to do things wrong and break it sometimes and take risks. Theory and practicing and doing tutorials is really helpful, but actually getting a real website out there in the world and having real world problems to look into and troubleshoot and solve, I think really gels a lot of the different learnings you have experienced from books and blogs and videos, and brings it all together into a practical place. And that's where it comes, where the rubber hits the road for me and things start to really snap into place in my mind.
Okay, and our next question comes from, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Reliska Pasos. Thanks. For me, it's being a rough way with the freelancer life, but Women Who Code is being my place to reach for help and networking. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. Our next, we have some questions here in the chat I'm going to move over to now. Looks like I saw one over here. How can I find paid internship opportunities in Canada? And this comes in from Rene Gade.
Well, Minneapolis and Seattle are both pretty close to Canada, but I don't know specifically about the labor market in Canada. Doug, do you have anything?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do not either. But you know, I would think that depending on location and where you're at, there might be regional or local meetup opportunities. I know that we didn't really highlight networking outside of work, but if you do a cursory search on online, there's definitely groups that you might be interested in, and you can also certainly navigate it through the certain technology that you're interested in. You know, there are going to be different opportunities for JavaScript engineers versus Java, depending on where you're at. And another really great way to find some of those opportunities is going to the, say, forums or technology-based Slack or, you know, what have you, user groups. And then searching based upon location there as well.
I can speak a little from experience. My first programming gig was a paid internship, and it wasn't advertised. There was no opening for a paid intern at this company. It was a small company, and I had met some of the people at a local JavaScript meetup, and I just insisted and sort of knocked on their door and offered myself as a paid intern. In this situation, they decided it was worthwhile to take a risk. As a paid intern, you know, you can come in at a much lower price than a lot of professional hires that they would have to make. And especially if it's like a contract internship where it might be hourly, there's a lot less overhead for their HR department. So if you can position yourself, and I'm not sure exactly the laws in Canada, but if you can position yourself so that it's really easy for them to take a risk and bring you in, it actually might be a really good deal, especially for a small company that's short on resources, to hire you as a paid intern. It could be substantially cost saving for them to give you that opportunity. So I would encourage you to find companies that you think are neat, with people that you actually like, and maybe some friends that you've made via networking, and just ask them if they'd be willing to take a chance, rather than waiting to find something that's formally posted on a job board somewhere.
Okay, looks like we have another question here coming in from Anaka BM. Which is the most demanding stack to start with as a full stack developer? Which is the most demanding stack to start with as a full stack developer?
I can't certainly speak for Benjamin, but I would say a stack that isn't commonly used. I think it's going to be very difficult in terms of perhaps, say, learning or having resources online. I know that there are a lot of common, say, technology stacks based around the web that have been around for a while, and they may not be the most hot thing or cool technology on the job boards, but the reason why a lot of them are still around is because there are a lot of resources available to learn, and that there is still demand for opportunities to work within that stack.
And I'm going to check to see if we have any more questions here. Looks like our Q&A, we don't have anything there and anything in the chat. Okay. And Rainey just says, thank you for the information there. Look at one thing here. Okay, so that looks like we have
Is DockYard still hiring?
Okay, yep, we have another one for Lorna.
Doug probably knows better than I do. I don't know that we're hiring any open positions for engineers right now.
Yeah, currently in terms of applications, we love to hear from engineers all over the world. Currently, we are looking towards future hiring just because we're a consultancy and our nature is really if we have any current products we're working on or products down in the future, then we'll have the availability to bring on new team members. So we love to hear from people all over the world. But we're just awaiting for some of these projects to really kick off before we can take on some of these engineers.
Okay, so we're just checking the Q&A in the chat one last time. We want everybody to get your questions in. Definitely thank you so much, Doug and Benjamin, for your presentation today and just all of the great information that you've shared with our audience. Definitely, it's such a treat to hear information at the, just past the developer level and also within the team and the company level. This is really pertinent, really important information, how developers can give back and also how they can be a part to foster those learning environments and not feel siloed. So definitely great information there. So just want to make sure and check that we don't have any questions. I have some last minute closing updates that we'd like to give just before we close out today. So I want to give about another minute or two here just to make sure we get the questions. And also Doug and Benjamin, if you'd like to give out your contact information and let folks know how they can find you if they want to follow you and reach out to you.
Yeah, certainly. I do have a Twitter, but I've been off of social media for quite a number of years. But I'll definitely add my my handle here, and we do plan on sharing the slide deck presentation with you, Jennifer. So if folks want to follow in or click on some of those reading links that we do have within the slide deck, they'll have that opportunity to do so there. And if you do have any other questions, Benjamin and I both have our email email addresses available. So do please send us any messages if you have any questions or any follow-up.
Well, thank you so much, Doug, for that information. And I will share the deck out in our Slack. So if you are not a part of our Slack community, definitely send an email over to frontend@womenwhocode.com. So it looks like we have a last question here from Kali Sengupta. Last question, how do I ask someone from the team to be my mentor? Have you had mentors and how did you manage to get it?
Yeah, okay. At DockYard, we have a bit of a semi-formal mentorship program that has been a little bit of an experiment and it's been kind of codified into a process that's now, I don't know how long it's been going on, but it's still pretty new, where basically we have a sign-up form and says, if anyone is interested in being a mentor, please sign up and include check any boxes of the skills that you believe you would be a good mentor in. Meanwhile, if anyone would like to be a mentee, you can sign up, and you can also sign up for both. So I actually signed up as a mentor in JavaScript and as a mentee to learn more about the Elixir programming language. So if obviously that's easy when there's something that's in place, but it sounds like there's probably not, in a lot of places, something that's been formalized like that. So one approach would be to actually approach management and come up with a proposal for creating a semi-formal mentorship program in your company, which, that would require some work. But I would really encourage people to try, especially sometimes management might be actually looking for ways to build and grow and have more skill sharing going on in their team. So someone in management might be willing to champion that. If you don't have buy-in from management, you want to do it kind of informally, then I would say maybe just create a personal relationship with a senior level programmer with whom you feel safe having conversations with, and ask if they wouldn't mind being sort of an informal mentor for some period of time. I think it's good when a mentorship has a well-defined beginning and an end period of time. It might be 3 months or maybe 6 months. And it could just be for an hour a week or even as low as an hour a month. If that's something you can get someone to agree to, it could be a really good step in the right direction. And if you do it on an informal level and it works out, you could present that to management and probably bolster your buy-in for formalizing something on a company level after that.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to look and just make sure that we have all our answers, our questions here. All right, so it looks like we have all of the questions went through. We didn't miss anything. So I'm just going to quickly share our closing updates for today before we close out here. All right, so what we have coming up, everyone, if you're new to the track, again, like I stated, welcome. Thank you for attending the webinar event today. One of the things we like to do on Fridays is have our Slack Front End Friday Slack study group. So that happens every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you get to come in, talk about any topics that you want, for instance, progressive web apps or GraphQL. Sometimes it's just a free for all Front End Friday where you can ask questions about if you're having a debugging problem, or if you want to pair program and you need someone to look over your portfolio or ask me anything sessions, we definitely do that there. Also, Women Who Code Connect Digital 2020, June 19th. So this is day 3. This is our last Friday of Connect Digital. So we have been so excited to host over the past 2 Fridays. If you've been with us, June 5th and June 12th, talks focused on code and also career. This week, talks will focus on community and technology for social good. So definitely come and attend if you can. Sessions are going to be recorded and they will be on our Women Who Code YouTube page. Also, Ask Me Anything sessions for front-end development. We recently had one with one of our lead evangelists, Cecilia Martinez, where she was doing resume reviews and also portfolio reviews. So definitely we're going to do more of those. Express your interest to us in the Slack. You can definitely email us, let us know what Ask Me Anything sessions you'd like to have coming next with engineers. Also, welcome to the new Leadership Fellows. So this year, the new fellows, they have been announced. There will be 2 fellows per track. For the front end and mobile track, our new fellows will be Mary Kate Comer and also Kamari Patrick. They will be formally introduced this week to everyone within Connect Digital. If you have not met them already, they have been introduced in our Slack, and I am working closely with them to help onboard them and get them ready for their events that are coming soon. So we're so excited to have them. Also, be a Women Who Code front end volunteer. If you go onto our womenwhocode.com website /front end, click on the Get Involved tab if you'd like to be a volunteer as a lead or an evangelist with any of the tracks. But definitely, if you'd like to volunteer with front end, we would be so happy to have you. So those are just our updates for today. And also a special thanks to our sponsors, BCG Digital Ventures and the Home Depot, our track sponsors. And also thank you for everyone. Thank you all for watching this presentation today. Thank you, Doug and Benjamin, for being here for that great presentation and all the information we have. We'll definitely be recording this and we'll get this recording out to you all as soon as we can. And we will definitely see you again online. Thank you all for attending today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Or evening or morning, if that is the case where you are. We'll see you next time.